Welcome to the Rogue L&D podcast, allowing you to meet some of the brilliant folk driving people performance and development forward in an informal and human way. My name's Tom Bailey, award-winning L&D leader and passionate maverick for all things development. Join me as I ask questions of some of the industry's most innovative and interesting people. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Chau. Tia has lots and lots of experience in leadership, people development, and really focuses on human-centred design. Today, Tia and I are going to be talking about coaching, leadership, people development, AI, and a couple of other things. Tia, how would you introduce yourself?
I am the person you probably want to talk to if you're thinking about growing your people performance culture, but doing that in an intentional and deep way. So that means focusing on learning, well-being, relationships, and how it gets embedded within your organization. I also am very passionate about leaders and giving them the best setup to be able to scale. So I'd say that's my mission.
And what are you particularly passionate about?
Oh gosh, I am all about empowering. L&D is like the best space to be in to be able to do that. I love the complexity of bringing a well-designed, well-approached learning solution to life. I love the freedom to discover and then experiment with what sits all around that. It's probably one of the aspects that I think is less appreciated in the corporate settings, to be honest, which is why I really enjoy being able to work with individuals directly as well as businesses to allow for that span of creativity. And I think you'll discover that more that I didn't start as a learning practitioner, professional. I kind of went into it through a series of life experiences that progressed due to my own struggle with how I was learning and becoming a life learner and being a high achiever and what that meant to me and how that created a level of burnout. So I think that's really fueled my passion for incorporating well-being in the way that we also design and consider learning as well.
So, Tia, I want to start by finding out a little bit about you. Now, I obviously know you, and we met working on a project together, firstly, didn't we, back in the day? And I think the thing that struck me about you was your ability to, counsel objections in a really productive way, but also was to find really innovative solutions that put them across in a really gentle, soft way, which I really liked. And project management for you is, I guess, like drinking water. You're so good at it. It's so easy, or it seems like it's so easy to you. But before I start evangelizing about how great you are, your background is in HR, I believe, and then you transitioned into more leadership and learning space. There's something that I wanted to call out on your LinkedIn, which I noticed and I particularly love. My LinkedIn's just stopped working, actually, which was you've got about you, you've got be human, think well, give big. I think that's great. I think it sums you up with the human element because you are very, very human-centered. But enough about me driveling on. You tell me, or you tell us about you.
Okay, so everything you've said is true. What you see is what you get is probably what you've experienced of me since we first met on that project. And I am very much behind the humanizing workplace mission. So I'm really glad to hear that that's coming through in our own interactions, just people to people. And it's definitely something that I want people to first see if they're ever engaging with me on a platform or in person. Those values that you, and even more so principles, I suppose, that you just read out, like the journey I went into learning that's also born from personal circumstances and kind of me developing as a human, that I felt is actually relevant and transferable to career and my professional space. So I thought, great, you've noticed it. And it's also a really authentic part of me. So I guess in terms of that, that's me as a human, which is where I like to start. But if we then move aside to the side of professional, what do I do? Um, I basically set leaders and business up to grow their people performance and culture. Um, I like to say on purpose as a part of that statement, because there is, I guess, me learning after 15 years of being in the people culture space, this kind of accidental culture that can come about. So I make a point around the purposefulness of shaping people performance and culture. And the focus for me has been around deepening and leading through learning, well-being and relationships to be able to make that happen.
Mm-hmm. Great. Beautiful. I love at the start there you put in about your own personal experience, and obviously we all have unique experience and unique situations and life that we work through, which shapes us. But I love that you wear yours really proudly, and it represents so much of what you stand for in terms of your professional work as well. You want to use that, and you want that to be the catalyst for change, and I love that.
Yeah, look, we might kind of stumble along that story in other parts of this podcast, but I do want to also acknowledge that it's not something that I was able to talk about right from the beginning. I think there was a lot of courage building and uncertainty or facing into uncertainty. And, with the work that's been done more nowadays around vulnerability, I think that's definitely assisted in me being able to go straight to that rather than finding the right moment and doing the little dance before it happens. But I do believe that that human connection forms through telling a little bit more about yourself is so much powerful, and it cuts through the noise a lot more effectively than just trying to present what you think others might want to see.
I agree. There's also an element of humility in that as well, which, we are literally all human. And sometimes that gets overlooked. We just try and present ourselves as robots.
Don't we have AI for that?
We do.
Yeah.
AI. Hey, that's a really good segue. Let's talk about AI very briefly. How do you use AI in your practice?
Look, when you say practice, my head goes into there's the discipline, which is the people, culture, all that kind of stuff. So there is that part. I do work within businesses to stay connected to what's really going on internally. But when you talk about my coaching practice, that's a business that I own. So two slightly different worlds that overlap from an AI use perspective. Honestly, if we're talking about business AI in my world, it's definitely a higher priority development area for me, and I think for a lot of people. So I'm not embarrassed to say that I'm on that learning curve. In terms of looking internally into HR functions and how I support, there's a bit that's happening organically through existing systems, so you're kind of inheriting some of the AI functionality because it's being fed through those systems that you already have. And that's a lot in the HR system, HRIS, learning management systems, Microsoft Teams, Microsoft, it's, Copilot, that kind of stuff. And I'm like, it's a similar thing here that I'd point out with business and, working in the business space and corporate space from an internal perspective. It's that whole word of mouth thing and people learning through word of mouth and the promotion of that. So you hear a lot about, oh gosh, that's really painful for me. I've done this. And you're like, oh, really? And you kind of start to kind of promote and share more around that. So I think the shared knowledge piece is helping with that, where you've got more connected teams, and it also removes some of that barrier around the trust piece, right? Because I think when it comes to demystifying AI, it's come a long way. I think there's been progress on that. Trust in the small ways it can be helpful, but there's still some way to go with regards to, can you truly trust it to give you links that, are actually going to be accessible in your own Australian region as opposed to somewhere else, like happened to me the other day. Um, um, So, in terms of collaboration tools, so if you look at how people can work better together, that's certainly um, a way that we can actually use AI to be able to do that. There's When you talk about automation, I feel like automation's probably the basic, the baby of AI. It's where you can do a lot of that work quite easily, and it's where it's all kind of stemmed from. But there's still a lot more. People seem to be a little bit more attracted to the bells and whistles of AI, and oh gosh, that's very advanced and stuff, and they're not kind of starting with an automation, which is a little more accessible to some, which is a bit disappointing, I find. Um, but yeah, within the people space, certainly when it comes to people insights analytics, that's something that's really benefiting from AI. No more trawling through lines and lines of data and trying
Well,
to
you
make.
say, hold on, T, you say that. But I mean, two things that you said. Automation, I didn't mention automation, but you're bang on. It's such a good point, because I think the majority of people in work, it's maybe unfair, but I think the majority of people hear AI and think automation, which is different. AI is so much more, but also I think adoption is so slow. We humans can't keep up with the developments in AI, and the stuff you can do is transformational, but there are glitches, there are things you've got to check. I just don't think organizations are up at the races yet. In fact, that's not really a secret, especially where we are here in Oz. Um, but you did make me chuckle, because I was just thinking, the one thing in L&D that we love, and we've loved it forever, is new ways to create content, video learning, MOOCs, VR, anything, any new fun way in which we can just create even more content that we get ready to stuff down people's throats. And I think AI is another example where stuff that really excites people is, oh, we can create new content. How? This is amazing. Like Notebook LM. I mean, I don't know if you've used that, but yeah, so you can create a conversation or a deep dive, which is quite cool. But it's all content creation, right? I think the gold in AI for us in leadership and learning and development and our people development space, the gold is how we can utilize AI to help people develop and perform better. And that's not necessarily just building more content. I don't think we need any more content. It's how we can bridge the gap to help people as and when they need it.
As humans, we're kind of born to create, right? That excites us. We're here to create, so we can't help it, unfortunately. The interesting thing for me is whether we realize that in what's already been created, the content that you talk about, the magic for me and what keeps it fun for me in the learning design, and when I do my work in the learning space, it's looking at what we currently have and recreating something from that, in the sense of how do we kind of piece those already existing parts together in a way that sends a message or facilitates change or learning in a way that different people can connect with it. And so, I've kind of gone down, I've seen where L&D practitioners can go too far into trying to convince someone of a certain method or a certain piece of content being, that's going to be the colors to all of your learning and growth, as opposed to being that facilitator of, well, here are a range of things and you get the pick of which one resonates with you. And these are the things. So I feel like where it's been fun for me is the creativity of going, I know all these things are there, and I'm not going to reinvent, and I'm not going to create something else, but how do I kind of weave it all together?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I think it is how you weave it together. How do you make it more human based? How do you make it more attractive and interesting and engaging? And how do you, like I said, how do you help people at that point of need that they have, which is probably unique to people around them? What I'm less interested in is what we popularly call content dumping, which is we don't really care about any of that. We just want to churn more stuff out. We want to get back on the factory line and just create more stuff. And AI allows us to create more stuff that's interesting but quicker. Fantastic. More videos, more PowerPoint slides. I don't know, whatever it is.
So I feel like, so we already spoke about the fact that I haven't kind of started in L&D. It's kind of been a natural progression for me. So where I played in previous to it has more so been in the agile product development tech space. I've dealt with a lot of those kind of communities in the people development support space. And I feel as though now I'm looking back and going, oh my God, I'm really grateful for having had that, because what it's actually done for me is that it's put me in a way of working where it's very reiterative and it's very much about problem solving in a way that, if I give an example, if there's a product being a learning solution, a program to be developed, and you're kind of going in with a brief and you're really clear about the direction, but you're both open-minded and experimental about how that gets developed. Often it's a lot about building the plane on the way up situation, which not a lot of people might be comfortable with. But in kind of practicing that method, I'm then going in, looking at the direction where we want to head, looking at what we've got, looking at what else do we need to introduce, right? Because there are elements of new functionality that you need to kind of introduce if there isn't one already there, or you're tweaking current functionalities, or you're fixing bugs, or whatever it is, right? You're fine-tuning that product as you go along. And the investment is only ever going to happen in terms of time and money if it actually it addresses a particular problem in the product. Yeah. If that makes sense. So
it does. Yeah. It does. When you talk about plane going up, I think I'm hearing minimal viable products, like that agile approach to bolting things on or changing bits as you start to try it out and use it and pilot it. And yeah.
I've learned to create learning solutions or co-create them with teams. So then it's kind of addressing what's important to the user at the end of that. And in doing so, it's meaning that I don't have to waste my efforts on stuff that I may have prepared but never gets used, or
yes,
that kind of coming into that pitfall that you were talking about. So I do feel like perhaps I have used that method of design and development to counteract the risk of doing that. So I actually feel less impacted, honestly, around in terms of that risk than I hear of others.
So I get that methodology, and it's great, and I would subscribe to it 100%. But what if, and this is very true for so many, you've got a client who's giving you direction who doesn't actually know where they're going, or has a direction which is wrong. So they're just like, I want to create something that's not that's over here because it's something I did 20 years ago and I think that might be interesting, even though it's not right for the people. How do you manage that situation?
When you say that, the things that come to mind is, are they actually giving me direction, or are they giving me the exact product? Yeah. So for me, it's like, if the intention is there and the intention becomes the problem you want to solve, it'd be really hard to not meet that intention in the right way. If you, in terms of, in the context of, what if you end up with something that's totally out of whack or whatever, and that's usually aided by having certain agreed principles and impacts or ROIs that kind of tie into that vision. I have learned to get better at telling the leader or the business, you're now going into product building. Like, that's not what we agreed is the setup here. The product is going to be built based on what happens, but you build the vision out from there. And that's a really good question, because that is a very real danger. Because often, like, even when in usual needs analysis exercises, learning and needs analysis. Often you ask someone to discover their learning needs, and at the end of that conversation, they come out with something completely different to what they had thought at the beginning. Kind of similar to that, where it's like, I don't need you to tell me what it is exactly, the look, feel, and everything. We'll figure that out. At the end of the day, what purpose is it serving? And then where are some of those caveats that we need to kind of focus on as well? Does that answer the question?
Of course it does. I mean, it's interesting. Have you ever been in that position where, let's say you're 3 briefs in and you've iterated and iterated, and you suddenly go, you have that creeping feeling that this isn't actually going to, this isn't going to address the issues that they raised originally, and it's going off on a tangent that maybe is trying to appease a personality or, political reasons?
That's for me going into dynamics. Like yes. And that is the wonderful world of, committee, where you've got several different opinions and strong minds in there trying to achieve things. So, where I've identified that in the past, look, I've failed at this several times to kind of get to a little bit of progress with it, but more further down the track where I've had more success with this is when there has been a shared, so let's say we come up with 4 different things that we need to kind of make sure that we tick off from a design principle perspective. This is what it ultimately needs to be able to do, or whatever. How it does it, we'll figure out on the way. 2 approaches. It's the assigning each endorser a champion for one of those things. So because they become the natural advocate of, well, this is for me to be winning in this space, for me to be accountable and then tick off that particular principle, I need to challenge others around that piece, and I need to kind of make sure that they're on board with that. So that's happened in one example where I've had, I was thankful that I did have directorship endorsements of it, where they're like, okay, these guys are pretty tricky. They all have different agendas. So it's a matter of going, well, which of those are going to be less adopting of a particular idea, and they get the idea to run with. So yes, at points it was adversarial, and we even had one of them potentially try to drop out of the whole initiative itself. But that was kind of managed separate to that. So that kind of like, you are the advocate of something that challenges your biases and stuff like that. So that environment was a little bit more adversarial, and that could happen in a less challenging environment, or where people are a bit more less candor oriented. It's probably been more endorsement from one single point to kind of say, hey, this is what we need to hold ourselves true to in terms of that North Star, and this is what we're going to go with. I will caveat that with, there have been times where, much to my distaste, I've had to carry through a particular idea and I guess grit and bear the failure of it, but not taking accountability of that. And the truth is, sometimes as humans, we will want to experience the failure to be able to learn from it. And I think every L&D person appreciates how real that is.
You're totally right, and I like you have definitely failed on many occasions and hopefully learnt from it. But you're right. Sometimes you just, what's the phrase? You got to let one through to the keeper. You've got to let it go. You can't fight every battle, and depending on the context that you're in, you'll know how much currency you have. You'll know what the greater aims are for the performance agenda, and I think it probably does all start at the very front end, whether you're using performance management, whether you're using a different approach to identify what the issue is, or even if you're coming in with someone with a pre-baked idea of what they think the issue is, how are you addressing that? How are you helping them root a little bit deeper into that? I'm interested to know what your advice is for people who are in that situation. So people who maybe are struggling with that being dragged off into an area. Let's say they're given a brief for, just going to throw out a random thing, presentation skills. Let's say I always love, and there's nothing wrong with presentation skills, always great. But I found in my experience, presentation skills are not as common as people write and produce resources for. And normally there's something else going on, or often there's something else going on. But hypothetically, let's say someone's in trouble. They've got performance skills and they've just been told just create an e-learning. And that's pretty common, right? Just create an e-learning. That's what we need. Boom. Don't worry about people using it or what they're going to do with it. Just create me an e-learning. What would your advice be for people in that situation?
So I'm going to make an assumption that first part, unless you tell me that it hasn't been done, where it needs to probably get some corrective action going. But the first part around really understanding how the presentation skills is really going to make any sort of a difference. And if there's been an alignment on that and somehow we've gone off track, for me, that sounds potentially like a simple, let's get back on track to North Star. If that hasn't happened, I think that's a showstopper. I think that's a bit of a hang on before we waste any more time. And I think that's got to be framed in the sense of this is where I'm at. This is where I see the current solution as in its current state is going to create that difference. Are we okay with this? Is this where we're really wanting to land? Because I'll keep going. Or is this different to what we understood or we probably didn't get enough or deep enough on? So that certainly has happened to me before. The other scenarios where something's changed and no one's kind of really lent in, which has also happened to me where it's just kind of kept going. And this is what I love about the way in which you structure the relationship. So you talked about project management earlier on and how we've experienced that together. One of the biggest lessons for me is that tight relationship. And it's often seen to be more task oriented than relationship oriented. So for me, I've lent more into the project relationship management for these reasons, to kind of be able to hear the unsaid. Like you get a feel for what it is that's happening that you're like, oh, no one said that yet. But for sure, that's got to have some level of impact, right? And then you kind of can contextualize. And I think that's a good lesson around, especially if you're an internal L&D function, where if we're not keeping close to those other support functions more broadly in the HR team, and I definitely have had experience with this personally, but also have both good and bad. But, you know, there's real wisdom in being able to combine powers for L&D, OD, and people and culture. I've seen it where that hasn't happened as well, and the value leak. And then there's also the extended support crew, right? Because there's the IT, marketing. We've already talked about AI, so that's already relevant there. Then we're talking about marketing, which I just so listeners can know also, I have side projects where I've kind of dabbled into online businesses and created products and things like that. And as part of that journey, I've had to really get into marketing and being able to kind of work on messaging, copy, like all of those advertising pieces that a lot of us don't really need to go to. And that has taught me so much around the importance of messaging. And so, you know, marketing becomes such a big player in that. And a lot of people functions don't have any kind of component around internal comms, which is strange to me still. But yeah, that's another story from that time.
Well, maybe it's not. Maybe we can talk about it now. For me, there's two components to anyone in L&D. I don't care whether you're the LMS administrator, which I still can't believe is an actual role still in this day and age that someone has to manage an LMS. But anyway, whatever your role, in L&D, I think you have two main functions. You obviously have a professional function around developing people and the strategy around that and the implementation. And we can talk about facilitation, we can talk about ID. But the two kind of things that people talk less about is the things that we've already talked about quite a bit. One is influence and the other is marketing or communications. Those two are so important to our role because unless you work at a massive bank or state government or, somewhere with bigger resources in L&D, if you're just in let's call it a regular organization, you're probably going to be either standalone or one or two people. So it's all on your shoulders to demonstrate that you're adding value. And you don't do that by just fulfilling orders and saying, oh, e-learning. Yep, sure, I'll whisk that up. Or, oh, you want me to deliver another insights training or disc profile training? Yep, great, I'll do that tomorrow. Because we haven't really understood what the issues are. So for me, it's around how do you stakeholder manage and how do you market and communicate in a really clear way. And I think those two, not allowed to call them soft skills. Let's call them power skills is apparently what we call them. But those two are so empowering for L&D. And certainly they get talked about less, but I think, well, not by everyone. I think if you listen to David James or you listen to any of those thought leaders in L&D, they'll talk about it quite a bit. But for me, those two are really important in any role that you're doing. Have you found that?
So much. Like I'm listening to you and I'm similar to your remarks there around L&D administrators and things. I can't understand why there's not much more of this. Like I do not understand. I've never since entering HR waiting for there to be a bigger shift. When I say waiting, I mean I'm trying to do something and I'm just like, I get pushed back around, why do you need to talk to them for? It's not your job and it's not really important because no one understands marketing. What the hell do they do? Which is funnily because I get that question about HR all the time. So
you put HR, they put people on pips, I think, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah. We have a quota. Yeah. It's like one of those the parking meter guys who go around. Like we have one of those every week.
That's good. It reminds me of I was working at an organization and it was interesting. I guess middle management really had no idea what I was doing. Like really didn't understand it, especially if I wasn't facilitating. So what is it you do, Tom? And you try and explain it, but you are speaking another language. But this comes back to this stakeholder management piece. And you could see they were genuinely like, what is it you do? Like what actually is it that you're doing here? And I get it. I mean, it on the outside, if you don't know and you've never worked with L&D that's really adding value and driving performance change and behavioral change, then you wouldn't understand what it is that we're doing or we're trying to do. And I get that complaint. I understand that. But at the same time, if you think about, this, people are our biggest asset in any organization, unless your organization is pure robots. So if that's the case, why are we not trying to tick that over by 2%, increase performance? The benefits are exponential. If you think about 3%, 4%, it's just people are your biggest asset, then switching them on to a higher level and enabling them and helping them to feel better about their job. They're doing a better job. There's no end of benefits. Forget the percentages that EY and various reports will come out with. They're there. You can search for them. But so many benefits to increasing performance. Yet a lot of companies go, well, times are hard, sales are down, so we're going to cut L&D or we're going to cut the budget of HR. When you think about it, if sales are down, then most people that's going to involve some kind of relational work, some kind of sales element. And therefore, a performance shift would be really helpful. Mm. Anyway, I'll get off.
Can I just say, because I feel like one of the questions you're going to ask me is around how do we persuade or influence leaders and businesses to kind of take up and invest in.
Hold on, Tia. How do we influence and persuade businesses to take up?
I knew it. I had that intuition. But thank you for asking the question. my honest answer is I am sick of needing to sell it. Wholeheartedly, if you have people working with people and people at all in your organization, and you want it to grow, and therefore you want the people doing the work to grow, then it's not science, it's just logic and it's non-negotiable. So I think what's going to happen is there's this new generation of workers and there's a difference already emerging, as we can see, around the thought patterns and value systems, the deeper parts of what drives decisions and behavior, right? That is vastly shifting. And I feel like it's a matter of you either wait to be forced to do it or you chip away at it and get to a point where you've got some of these things and are ready for it. There's already cases of that in some of the organizations I worked with recently where, although in like smaller pockets, because it's kind of creeping into businesses, where the appreciation for some of that legwork to be done previously, prior to the clash of I need this, I want this, the kind of me economy, this is what's in it for me. How do I actually learn and grow? Because I know now that from a well-being perspective, there's so much benefit to it. So people are naturally, well, not naturally, but becoming more read up about these things. And so it only takes one individual to kind of pick up an article or see something that doesn't quite fit into their value system to call it out these days. And I can attest for any HR person, they're experiencing more and more of those call outs, right? And it's good that it's come to that. Though, what are businesses doing about it? Are leaders equipped to manage those things? Are you equipping your leaders to manage those things? And what's the cost of that? So I feel like there's this this greater leverage here, lever around investing in people development because of the cost of not doing anything. So the pain, pleasure kind of, yeah.
As a consultant, I found that I get more work outside of Australia. So I get more work from Europe or North America than I do in Australia. What do you think actually, what do you think the reason for that is? I'm setting myself up for a massive fall. What do you think that we're a little bit behind here in Australia in terms of our understanding of driving people performance, or do you just think it's an industry specific thing? So, let's take FMCG or consumer or financial services. Each are at a different level depending on where you are.
With my experience, I definitely feel like a short answer is yes. I do feel like we're a bit behind. If I think about some of the interactions I've had with my counterparts in other parts of the world, there's US and UK predominantly, maybe a couple in APAC, where interestingly, like the climates that they come from in terms of the level of legislation is different. So they're having to kind of do things with more urgency and more diligence, I think, at times than us here. I often say we've got it pretty good in terms of our general protections and legislation. I mean, I say that, and you go and look at Sweden and Norway, and they're like totally off, like Scandinavia, off the charts, right? I'm not talking about that scale, but I do feel like definitely from a tech utilization perspective, like AI, there's an AI as an industry, tech as an industry in Australia is behind, and a lot of people have kind of gone offshore for that talent and the business and the markets there. In terms of knowledge and the role of HR learning and development here, I feel like it hasn't changed or transformed as quickly as some of the other roles. To be more partnering, to sit across business more than HR technical expertise. It's probably a couple of examples. And one close to my heart is that early career development of our HR cohort. So I'm really passionate about that because it's, again, something leading into my passion for learning in itself was my struggle with being the kind of people partner that I envisioned was going to be impactful, and there being nothing available or no one that could actually mentor me towards that at the time I needed it. So, I'm going to call us out here and say, even me for a while, were there coaching others and using coaching as a way to develop people. Yet you ask how many of us have actually been coached?
Yeah.
Just a thought for those listening to kind of have a think about and reflect on, like, how do you truly know something is effective and the experience you can have from it if you haven't tried some of it yourself. The other piece that's coming up real and pacing really hard is the wellbeing piece. We've got mental health aid training, we've got EAP, we've got all these resources, but when you talk about and talk to people partners and people dealing with, employee relations, relationships, anything like that, we're managing these cases and trying to develop leaders to kind of be able to manage themselves and their individuals through it. Yet again, it's like, how many of us have been trained on the wellbeing content of late? Because the science and the research around that has changed so much. How you approach it, what forms part of resilience in today's world, like that kind of stuff. And it, thinking back as an example, it probably took me 5 years into my career around about before I got any exposure to resilience. So I think maybe I'm also saying shine the light on ourselves to go, what are we doing for learning and development of ourselves?
Mm. And that very much plays to your focus on human, which you've showcased brilliantly. But I'm really pleased you've brought up coaching, because I do want to talk about coaching. You and I are both passionate advocates for coaching. I guess we should start, though, before we dive into coaching, by defining what we mean by it, because still now I talk to businesses and they start talking about, in their heads, they start talking coaching, but they're really thinking about dads on a soccer field shouting at kids, or mums sticking up kids from baseball or something.
Most of my work is on a soccer field. I bring my clients out there.
That's good. That's something we should definitely talk about. But before we do, let's talk about coaching. What do we mean by coaching?
Wow. Okay. So there's the coach.
That's a horrible question.
No. It's a very meaningful question, and really relevant to me, because I've been kind of had deep in like coaching culture, embedment, all that kind of stuff. So there's the coach role, and then there's the coaching practice of coaching, and the building the culture around coaching. So I often see it confused with mentoring, right? And I have had countless. So I'm going to draw from feedback that I've had people who don't quite get that concept or don't see the value in it come to me, challenging me with. And what I tell them is that the key thing is around what the benefit of you working things out yourself, right? So that speaks to empowerment through self-reflection, through self-realization, growth, blah, 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 versus somebody else giving you the answer that you could choose to apply. I mean, there's empowerment in that, don't get me wrong, but that's about relating to someone else's choices, whereas this is very much about empowering your own. So when I start there, I then pique their interest into, okay, so tell me a bit more. So I want to be in charge, so great that you're telling me coaching is going to put me in charge of this. how are you going to coach me through this? Like, what does that look like if you're not giving me advice? And I think that's the challenge for a lot of coaches. You want to be helpful and you want to give people the answers. Um, and the next point there is finding someone you connect with that you trust, who then will give you the space and the time to come up with those answers yourself rather than jumping ahead and going, hey, this is what I've done. Here, this is what, I said, that's precious in this day and age. So that space for you to be able to do that work is a huge benefit. So find me someone who doesn't want to have that space. Like, that already is of benefit. And then I guess in terms of what they do from there is the relationship that comes from that, because you've now established a relationship where you felt listened to. There's so much more wonderful things that can come out of that. And I often hear, and I don't necessarily agree, maybe in the traditional sense, yes, but the way that I see coaching adding value, lifelong value, you often hear, coach comes in and they're temporary. So if we mean that the coach deals with situations and that come and go, fair enough. But the coaching relationship, similar to the mentoring relationship, is lifelong. So that's the other thing I've been picking up on out there at the moment as well, in terms of, coaching, I just come to you and that's it, I never hear from you after I'm done with that. Well, no, not really.
It's a good pickup. I mean, I think just picking up what you said, if you're unfamiliar with coaching and you're listening to this, as Tia said, coaching is a way in which you work out your own solutions, or the best solution possible is typically one that you've worked out for yourself rather than being told. And there's some great research behind that. I remember from a lady called Irene Donaldson, who's now retired, but she used to head up coaching at Nestle in the UK when I worked with her. She was brilliant. I think she said something like that. And for me, the difference is, if you think about a continuum, you've got coaching kind of at one end where there's more of a development pull. And at the other end, if you've got teaching, let's say, there's more of a development push back to that content that we're wedging into people's faces. And mentoring is somewhere later than coaching. Someone can impart more knowledge on you. They can tell you what they advise. Although I'd still say that good mentoring involves coaching. There's space to think and to reflect, albeit with a bit more impact. We obviously worked on groundbreaking projects around functional mentoring, which, if anyone wants to know more, then the Tia and Tom consulting practice will happily reach out to you. But I do love not messing with these things, but using them, because like you, I really think that coaching changes people's mindset. It takes them from just following orders and doing what they need to do to get by, to thinking through, taking responsibility, and opening their mind to learnings, to bold action, and ultimately to leadership. And when I think about coaching, to take you back to your final point, an organization looks at coaching typically as a series of interventions. Right, you're going to have 5 sessions with your coach. Hey, brilliant. Go and fix whatever it is you need to fix. But instead, we should be thinking about coaching as a self-fulfilling ecosystem. And what I mean by that is everyone should be coaching everyone all of the time. We need to stop thinking about it like therapy and start thinking about it like everyone's responsibility. Because you heard it here first, the future of the way we work together is coaching. It's in every way in which we interact. So it's every time someone comes up to you and says, John's an idiot. I don't know what he's talking about. He's got stupid hair. And say, hey, what's your problem? Instead of going, yeah, John's an idiot. He's got really bad shoes as well, or whatever. You say, hey, tell me more about that. It sounds like you're really struggling with it in an authentic way. Because if you do that, not very authentic, it loses it. But that's how, for me, that's how you build culture. That's starting to chip away at how you build a mature culture.
Can I just build on what you've just said, Tom? So then you go into potentially mentoring / teaching, if you like, but more so mentoring. In that same scenario, you could also have the response rather than, tell me more, understand what the situation is. It's, what I would do in that situation? I would go to the guy and have it out and tell him that's not cool, right? That advice giving can be damaging if used in the wrong way, at the wrong moments, right? And I think what I've been able to in the work I've done point out to especially probably early career professionals right through to kind of mid-career, where they're coming to you and they're saying, and I literally had a few of them come to me in a coaching session and said, "Well, I actually thought you were going to just give me the answer. Like, I actually thought that maybe you'd just tell me what to do." Um, and I said, "That's great. Do you want me to have your happiness and your success too?" Um,
Very good.
bec-
Nice response.
because essentially that's what you're doing. You're outsourcing those things because you're not giving yourself the privilege of making those decisions and gaining from what comes with it. Um, so I felt the need to point that out because a lot of people still place a lot of value on mentoring and advice giving, which is fantastic. It has a time and place, definitely. I've got my own set of mentors that I refer to, where I get the confidence to the building and all of that kind of stuff comes from the coaching I get from my mentors, or coaching rooms. So I think it's really ideal to have people understand what they're actually doing when they're reaching for one solution or the other.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess with that responsibility, you can start trying things, having a go. But I think for me, it really is that future way in which we all operate and talk to each other and work, because it's so much more effective than the old direct instruction. Go and do this. Okay, fine. And you may not be very good at doing that, or it may not be the right solution. I really like that. The caveat to this is that people don't know what they don't know. And I don't know if you've had this where someone who you don't know, but let's say you're doing coaching through a platform or whatever, they turn up and they say, "Oh, hi Tia. So, what are you going to teach me?" And that's their first coaching session, and you go, "Oh, this is going to be a wasted hour," because you have to spend time talking about what coaching is, what are they working, what challenges do they have, and obviously at the centre of all that classic coaching is rapport, which you probably don't have any rapport if you've never met them before. So I do think that organizations need to get a bit smarter about how they utilize coaching. Also in Australia, I don't know if you've seen this, love your input on this, but I think organizations that pretty much understand that coaching for senior execs, they understand that bit, less so on middle management or early careers. Have you found that?
Yeah, totally, definitely. And can I also add that, again, insights and learnings from more recent change programs to do with coaching. We also sometimes assume in the approach taken on rolling out a coaching culture or coach roles that it can be done in the same way as we do with our senior executives as with everybody else. And that's definitely been a resounding barrier. Um, so I do see, like, similar to leadership, if I can throw that in there as well, learning why the hell are we doing it once someone's in the role? And I mean, despite how many reports and engagement surveys you read where people don't feel equipped to be a leader, don't even know what the hell a leader is. I just kind of fell into it was the next logical step. Um, the intention behind it, the prepping for it, the connection with it, really needs to start way before that. So I would couple the whole coaching together with the leadership as a really powerful package. If you're going to do any kind of learning program this year and make it really good, I would really hone in on those two categories.
Yeah. I mean, leadership is, I mean, actually both were coaching specifically used to be top of the charts of L&D's favorite subjects, and then AI came along and it kind of took a bit of a tumble. But coaching is still highly relevant, and leadership is always there. There are lots of people out there talking about how they do leadership. Tia, what do you think are the principles for your approach to leadership, which are your must-haves?
You probably could guess one of them, which is make it human. What I mean by that is, it sounds weird because you're teaching humans about themselves. But one of the programs I've started thinking about and wanting to develop, and just side note, like, I'm one of those people that I will always need to do something for myself or to myself with regards to programs, because I feel like there are still a lot of limitations to experimentation and being able to kind of fearlessly find new approaches to learning. So I think that's also a message to businesses wanting to do learning, to kind of really open up the space for experimentation to happen, like you would for anything that you might release to a customer, because essentially they're your internal customers, right? But I guess in terms of leadership, when I say humans, it's how can we unravel some of the programming that we kind of know of typically at a certain point, like once someone reaches a workforce. There's all these things around how the brain operates, to kind of preposition you a little bit when it comes to, how you might decide a particular thing or not. The things that happen when there is a physiological response to an issue, and then leading yourself through that. So I think when I'm saying human, I mean, how well do we appreciate ourselves and our human tendencies that then impact our ability to lead and learn? And I think the reason why I'm so passionate about leadership learning at the early stage, I say early, but I think that's right on time, is because you're giving people time to process all of those very key learnings around how they can then scale. I work with a lot of leaders, emerging leaders, and that's kind of my little sweet spot there around identity. So one of the core components is around, well, what does that look like for a leader? What's your leadership identity? So we often kind of go, well, you give it to me. Like, you tell me what I'm supposed to do, and that somehow becomes my identity as a leader. It doesn't work that way. People confuse personal brand, leadership brand, with leadership identity. So one's driven from inner, and the other one's what others might seek from you and your brand. And I think there's often a lack of that inner work that a person does in identifying with how do they lead in a non-team management role? How would they lead in a team management role? And getting familiar with that. So then the steepness of that learning, when there are issues that might come along, the complexity of the world these days, is less of a far cry and less painful. So, back to, when you ask me what do I actually do when I set, in setting people or leaders and businesses up for success with performance and culture, it's understanding what's going to minimize that friction and elevate that growth in a way that's actually going to last. Because, there's so many things about humans and the way we learn. And when you talk about simple things like how much our unconscious mind hears and absorbs negative situations or criticism more than other things. So I'm not a fan of the do 5 positives and then do, like that. It's not a numbers game. Like, I don't understand that. But I do like it for the fact that, you've got to look at the whole week. You've got to look at the months that have gone by of events that have happened. It's not just about that one conversation and how you go in there, delivering 5 positives and 1 criticism or growth feedback. It's about how that has happened for them for the whole time. So I think there is a need to kind of humanize the way in which we design leadership programs and what that actually means in this day and age.
You prompted me to think about Atomic Habits, the best-selling book, right? It's because there's something beautiful about that 1%. What things you can do to just drive that change, and obviously over time that builds up. I don't want to give the whole book away, but spoiler alert, I probably did. But it's a great book if you haven't read it. But I'm interested to dig a little bit deeper into when you talk about human-focused leadership. Is it personalized? Can you go to another level of detail as to what you mean?
Yes. So, and similar to coaching, and why I think the two marry up so well, is you got to meet people where they're at, right? I think it is personalized, but it's also contextualized. There's a balance. So I find that my work with leaders in particular, especially in the coach room, a lot more impactful if I am able to contextualize with them. So, sometimes you get dropped in a business and it's like no background information, just go into that room, meet the person, off, done. So again, a rethink for businesses. If you're doing that, just how much are you not getting from that investment, right? Because it helps the coach to not be biased or be driven to prejudice with other things going on, but to be able to identify with and connect with what the individual might be going through and ask the questions that are going to be a bit more real life changing, if that makes sense. So I think it does need to be personalized to a certain extent, but prioritize personalization, if you know what I mean. Like, and similar to what you do with marketing, what are those key things that are really causing top pain or going to mean the most to that person? And so that's how you get them moving. I think it's going to be so hard to get momentum from anybody from a behavioral change perspective if you don't do that. And so once you've kind of connected on that level, it's then going, right, so how do we get you working in a way that suits your personal learning trajectory, but serves your context as well? So I hope that answered your question. But yes, I do feel like if you're designing learning or any kind of performance uplift program, you do need to consider the context as well.
Yeah, of course you do. I mean, I guess I'm conscious that context will be very different for different individuals doing different jobs, and obviously different organizations as well makes it even more complex. Is there anything else you want to talk about amongst our specialist subject?
There's a lot happening at the moment. When you open LinkedIn and you turn on the television, radio. I mean, who listens to the radio? Sorry, these days. But
The wireless.
yeah.
I switch on the wireless at 6 p.m.
That wasn't me having a stab at anyone there. Apologies. I guess it's hard to miss that there are counterparts, our peers in other parts of the world, specific countries that are doing it harder, I feel, getting it really build big resistance and to be able to do learning and development well. And I speak a lot around the DE&I space. And what I'm hearing is, is some of the things that they're having to kind of divert to rather than stay focused on the stuff that, we agree matters and all the stuff we talk about in this podcast. So I just want to spend a moment to kind of say that there is good change happening, and it is going to be, there is some level of optimism the rest of us have in kind of you seeing it through, and that we do see you, and the work that's going into that. And I think that only encourages the rest of us, I hope. And it's definitely for me more to be able to do more of that work. So then, the sense around the world is that there is a difference being made. So, I think I've just had a lot of conversations with a few other peers who are struggling. in this
Yeah.
space, Tom. So
Have you got any examples, obviously without naming names or anything, that you can share?
Yeah, look, depending on where your focus is, and the people I've been talking to have been more in the well-being and the DEI learning space. So just that's been their focus. And they are learning practitioners who've got to lean towards those areas. And just with, the political climate, obviously certain movements there, which we won't talk about here.
You're going to date the podcast now. Now everyone knows exactly when this podcast is happening. It's not going to be 2022 anymore. But anyway, sorry.
So, there's a lot of out of their control to be able to proceed with. And, even in some countries where there's a lot more controversy around, and still it's weird because we've unpacked the whole diversity. We've talked and absorbed a lot of the benefits of diversity and inclusion, but now we've kind of overcorrected in some of our efforts towards that it's gone backfired on us, where I'm hearing, has it overcorrected? People are feeling really unsure and a little bit fatigued trying to make things work. And so our colleagues are trying, especially in the people culture space as well, are trying to mend that a little bit. So I think it's those things out of our control that it's creating this chaos that's coming into the workplace. And so people are becoming a little bit more cautious, shall I say, of what content gets out there. How do you do that at the risk of offending someone? Or so they're kind of the things I'm hearing at the moment. So it becomes less growth oriented and a shrinking space for these people.
It's a good call out, and it's a really good reminder that there are people who are really, as you say, it's quite a good Aussie phrase, isn't it? Doing it tough. I like that. And I know we're not talking about politics, but it's interesting. You look at politics and there's pendulum swings from left to right. Okay. And that continues. I guess, personally speaking, I really miss centrism. So where you're trying to build consensus. I know there's downsides to that, but also it's okay to disagree with people. No one wants to offend anyone, of course, but it's okay to disagree. It's okay to have a constructive conversation that disagrees. In fact, disagreement's really helpful to help make decisions and to build a consensus and to test stuff. So yeah, I'd like to get back to that space where it is okay to disagree and it's all right. But at the same time, we don't want anyone to feel like they're isolated or put out in the cold. Oh, we really are dancing around this subject, aren't we?
Yeah. Look, I think it's very relevant, and I think, if anything, that's a big enough conversation for a whole other podcast. But I think the art of conversation in the modern day is at risk. And there are a few books that come to mind around that, where it's a very much talking about the ancient art of conversation. The ability to kind of connect deeply, and that from there is where all the ideation happens and the growth happens. So I think people are afraid to do that, and when you're afraid, you're not really open to learning, are you? So so I think it does have an impact on our space, very much so, and the practitioners within it.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. Was there any particular book references that you wanted to mention?
I'm gonna. I hope I get her name right. Tamsin Webster. So part of what we were talking about, we kind of dropped it in a few times, is the whole behavior change piece and messaging. So you said something around messaging. Oh, you agreed that messaging is really important. So for anyone who's interested, I think the way in which she applies her framework around messaging and influencing for behavioral change is really interesting. And she just hits the heart of what do you need to. So one of the things I love about the I guess parts of her model is the why Like we've gotten really good at understanding, yes, you do need a why. And, Simon Sinek has helped with that as well. But the why we should care and the why it matters to me, that's what's missing. And I think that's so true. It's not a selfish thing, but it's our ability to make sense of what is happening here.
Yeah.
And a lot of messaging misses the mark on that. So I think,
you're right. It's Tamsen Webster, spelled Tamsen.
Okay, good.
Webster. And her book is Find Your Red Thread. She has 2 books, but Find Your Red Thread, I think, is her first book.
I think it's something about what you don't hear, or
Say What You Can't Unhear is the other book.
Say What You Can't Unhear. That's it. It was a while ago, so I can't even.
There you go. Quickly check that while we're talking. Not active listening, so I apologize. I was trying to multitask. All right. In which case, can I ask you some fun questions now?
Please. Yes, let's end on a fun note.
Well, there's a couple. So what is something that people don't know about you, or most people don't know about you?
You know what? I'm such a boring person.
Make it any more secret.
I hear this question being asked of others, and I'm like, oh, there's so many interesting people. And I think of me and I'm like, oh gosh, I'm so boring. But the thing that did come to mind was I have a couple of quirky phobias. Kind of embarrassed to say out loud because they've gotten me into trouble at times, particularly with mums and children. And I'm a mum and I've got a child. And it's latex balloons.
Okay.
So I cannot stand the smell, the sound, the look of them.
That's except the foil ones. That's just
just latex. Balloons. I've literally run away from them in shopping centres when it's floated towards me.
Yeah.
And so I had one mother come and tell me how much of a horrible person I am because I didn't catch the balloon for her child because I was afraid of it. True story. And the other is the sea. I think I have more people in common with me than with that one, but I did not. Yeah, I did not.
Walking along the beach for you is horrific.
Walking away from the shoreline for me is good. But yeah, not alongside it. So I've been working on it. So it took me about almost 8 years to be standing in a room with balloons and also be walking the shoreline close to the water.
Gosh, it just reminds us that we're all unique and different, right? And there's nothing wrong with that.
You can say it. It's weird. It's weird, right?
No. People, no. Everyone's got. It'll be something that happened to you, I imagine. It's not just randomly you saw a balloon and went But that's what makes us unique, which is pretty much what we've talked about. Gosh, I'm so sorry. I mean, I quite like. Which is very un-Australian of you as well. I mean, given the sea is especially here, Sydney-siders, we're so close to all the beaches. I mean, that's...
Yes. I mean, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, if it helps, I don't really like the beach because of my incredibly white complexion. So it's not quite a phobia, but the thought of being outside without any shade, I know you can get your cabanas and stuff. But the thought of being outside without any shade does fill me with fear. Like just the sun. That's...
Well, at least you don't have a phobia of the sun. That would be not good.
No. I just don't want to get sunburnt, which, it's a high possibility for me. All right. And what about celebrity moments? Have you had any good celebrity stories?
I don't. Like, I regret never having met a celebrity. I know. But can I tell you, like, if I did have a choice of which celebrity I'd meet, like
you're creating your own celebrity.
Yeah, totally. Like if she happens to listen to Rogue L&D, please make my dreams come true. But Emma Stone, redhead, she
famous actress.
Yeah. Love her. She just personifies the kind of gal pal that I'd love to have in my life. Just the roles she picks, just how she's kind of seems to stay true to who she is and hasn't really gone down the path of trying to put on a character for the public, and I just like that realness. And she's just so talented. I mean, her range in acting, rom-coms is where I started, and with her.
I was going to say, where did you first discover Emma Stone's brilliance?
Of course, rom-coms.
Was there any particular film?
Do you know, I can't even remember which ones I loved of hers. But I can't remember the name now, but there's the one that she's done more recently where she's almost the Frankenstein version, where she's brought back to life. And
is it Poor Things?
Maybe it is Poor Things.
It's not Cruella.
No. I think it is Poor Things. It's a great watch if you're kind of into those things. But she just plays such a good role.
Okay, so it's your wannabe, and you're telling me you've never walked down the street and saw Carl Stefanovic having an interview, or I don't know.
Which streets you're walking down? Please tell me, because I've never had a celebrity encounter, and now I feel like it needs to go on my bucket list.
Oh, maybe you just haven't realised. I mean, yeah.
Oh, anyway. I had a missed one where we were in New York, and one of my friends told me too late that we'd just walked past Ethan Hawke.
Oh, okay, there you go.
So that would have been one, but that was a missed opportunity.
What street was it? And how far past were you?
We were at Times Square. And I literally turned around as she said it, and it was this guy in a hoodie hiding from the world. And I'm like, that could have been anyone. But she's like, no, it was him. And of course we Googled, and we're like, there were some pictures of him in a hoodie. So I just accepted that must have been.
I don't want to get all Columbo on this, but why would Ethan Hawke be walking through Times Square unless he's really desperate for attention? Because, of all the places to walk.
Do you know what? This was part of the year, during the years where he went MIA for a little bit. He just was like...
Why would he be in Times Square then?
No, maybe he just did the Schwarzenegger thing, or was it George Clooney, Richard Gere? One of those folks went and dressed as homeless people to kind of experience what it's like. So, if I saw a homeless Richard Gere and told people, they probably wouldn't believe me.
So let me share a very similar story with you. I saw the person and my wife didn't. So we were in Adelaide, the capital of South Australia, if anyone isn't familiar with Adelaide. And it was late at night, and this does sound made up, but I promise you it's not. We were crossing the street. There's no one around. I don't know. Adelaide was just empty at that time of night on the street that we were on. So I was crossing the road and I just looked up. You don't normally look at people, but I just looked up, and it was Dev Patel crossing the other way with someone. I don't know who he was with. And I went, oh, and I didn't do that thing where I went, oh, you're Dev Patel. Or, all right, mate. Or anything. I didn't say anything because I'm not that cool, and I would never know what to say. So I just kind of went, oh. I didn't noticeably say anything. And then I walked past, and we got to the other end of the crossing. And I just turned to my wife and said, oh, that was Dev Patel. And she went, what? And she looked around, and he was, down the street. You could see the back of him and stuff. And she was like, what? So she started Googling it, and he was in South Australia at the time. So, amazing. So it was actually really Dev Patel. I don't know if that's even a celebrity story. That's me walking past someone in a street. But
Not that.
Yeah. There you go. Sorry, do you know who Dev Patel is?
No. I'm just going to take your word for it.
Went along with it. Oh my goodness.
That's the level of trust we have in this relationship.
Yeah, true. Dev Patel was in the Tiger in a Boat film, and then he was in
Wait, was he the main character?
Yeah. Yeah. He was in,
not the guy pushing the boat.
What was it? The millionaire film in
Slumdog?
India? Yeah, Slumdog Millionaire. He was in that.
Oh, no way. Yes. Okay. Yeah. I know who you're talking about now.
Yeah. Okay.
Haven't watched either of those shows, but yes.
If he's listening, then obviously he needs to work on his marketing to Tia. But okay. And what other questions have I got for you? What's your best advice for others?
I would say start with trust, especially in this world today. Trust in yourself, in those who want to help you in the process that might lead you to success. It's not about ignoring evidence where trust is being broken, but it's letting the trust attract the opportunities in a positive, like affirming way. So you're not missing out on what could be because you are stuck in the distrust and starting there first.
Beautiful. Love it. Yeah. Okay. What's your favorite chocolate bar?
I have a favorite, Fruit and Nut is my favorite chocolate bar, but right now I'm really into Loca biscuit chocolates. Loackerer. Oh my God.
Yeah.
So
Swiss.
obsessed.
Swiss or Belgian or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
They're definitely not Australian, but oh my God.
They're definitely fancy European.
I can breathe those in.
That is a good call. And favorite coffee? Do you drink coffee?
I do.
Yeah, you do.
I do. And I can't even call myself a coffee drinker really because I have a mocha.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
It's more chocolate really, isn't it? Yeah.
Not for me to say, but if people want to find out more about you or get in touch, how can they do that?
Yeah. So I have two arms. I've got kind of like the more life-centered growth, learning, leadership and coaching space, which you can find me on Instagram. It's aptly named It's My Sweet Spot. And I'm definitely on LinkedIn. So my personal profile's on there. I do work with internally and externally with organizations, and I've got a page that where I kind of showcase some of my thoughts and ideas similar to these types of medias, and that's called Go Epic.
Thank you to our guest and to you for listening. If you want to boost the impact of your organisation's people development practices, I'd love to connect. You can find me at thomasbailey.co. Alternatively, you can look me up on LinkedIn.